This university in central Tehran is considered by the US and Israel one of the very first stages in Iran's nuclear supply chain. It was struck in mid-March by the US-Israeli campaign, and it's one of dozens of sites across Iran we've been analysing to see how much of its nuclear supply chain has been wiped out. And the answer is not as much as the US and Israel would like. That university you just saw has been under US sanctions since 2012 for researching and developing weapons of mass destruction. It's a reminder of just how long the US has been tracking Iran's ability to make nuclear weapons. And we found that in these latest strikes by the US and Israel, while much of the production process has been substantially damaged, some of the most important parts of this process, the stores of highly enriched uranium, may not have been touched at all. Let's start at the beginning of the supply chain. Alongside the research, the process starts at places like these, Saghan Uranium Mine, where the raw material, uranium ore, is mined. In recent years, Saghan Mine has expanded significantly. You can see widening pits, growing piles of earth, and diggers. We looked at recent imagery since the latest strikes and found no evidence of damage. In fact, from between the clouds, you can still see diggers operating at the site. So far, this indicates this stage of the nuclear supply chain may remain untouched. Next, the mined uranium ore is transported to production plants like this one in Ardakan. Here, it's converted into yellowcake, which is a type of concentrated uranium. We found this plant was substantially damaged in recent strikes on March 27th. An image taken the following month shows little change, suggesting the Iranians have not rebuilt this site yet. After this, the yellowcake is taken here to sites like this one in Isfahan to be purified and converted into uranium hexafluoride. And it's this stage of the supply chain that has caused the biggest headache for the US and Israel. Back last June, French outlet Le Monde found this truck visible in imagery taken just days before the strikes. These blue containers are likely carrying uranium into the tunnels, experts told CNN. Days later, these facilities were substantially damaged in Israeli attacks. You can see several buildings wiped out. Then, in early 2026, Iran covered over several entrances to these underground tunnels with earth, preventing people from accessing them. Further measures were taken this April when these roadblocks were put up in front of the entrances to the tunnels. It could suggest there still remains something valuable down there. They were not, however, hit in the latest US-Israeli strikes. Even experts we spoke to are unsure why. David Albright is a world-leading expert on nuclear weapons. How much of a risk in the future is that stores in Isfahan Mountain?
Well, I think it's a big risk. That's quite a bit of money in the bank. I mean, the amount of enriched uranium they've produced was equivalent to a full years of production of their entire enrichment complex, and is believed to be mostly, and almost all of it, at Isfahan.
In fact, the US believes this too, and their demand to remove this uranium has been a key issue in the stalling peace negotiations. And finding out exactly how much is down there is central to determining whether Iran remains a nuclear threat. Katie Polglase, CNN, London.
What is important to understand is there are a lot of different components of the nuclear program. There's the supply chain, there's the nearly 1,000 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%, which is the Iranians still have buried underground. Very difficult, in fact, for U.S. aircraft to strike, even with big GBU-57s. It's just buried beneath the earth. And then there are other things that weren't in that, like scientists. The Iranians have scientists, so there's nuclear know-how. The Israelis have killed a little bit over a dozen Iranian nuclear scientists, but there's still many out there. So there's knowledge that still persists as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just, impossible to just kind of eviscerate or obliterate the whole thing, obviously, as had been put out there. Now, Iran said today, Seth, something I wanted to ask you about. That, yesterday, we know that the UAE was hit by a large number of missiles and drones, okay? In fact, almost the most since the quote-unquote ceasefire even began. And Iran then said that their armed forces did not carry out any attacks on the UAE, but the UAE says they did, right? And there was obviously evidence of that as well. There was a major oil port in flames, and the UAE says it was 19 missiles and drones yesterday. So what is going on here? And I know you're learning something new about that really could change, in a sense, one of the core trajectories of this war.
Yeah, Aaron, it looks like Iran is trying to publicly make it seem like this is a war between Iran and the United States. The reality, as we look at what Iran has conducted attacks against, or it's conducted attacks against, even the last day or two, it's conducted strikes against the Emiratis and against Oman, targets in Oman, and their ships as well, including a South Korean tanker. So the number of countries that have been hit has grown. I mean, my sources are telling me that there is growing unhappiness within Gulf states who are increasingly looking at options to become more militarily involved, not just in defensive operations, but in offensive operations, including with potential for airstrikes. I mean, I understand that already one Gulf state has likely already conducted strikes in unpopulated islands in the Gulf as a signal that it could escalate. So I think we are on the verge of potentially seeing some escalation by Gulf states.
Joining me now is physicist David Albright, the president and founder of the Institute for Science and International Security. He is also a former nuclear inspector. Thank you so much for being here. First, when you look at the images, satellite images about Iran's nuclear capabilities and what you know about its capabilities from before all of this, what do you glean from all this?
Well, one is before the war started in June, Iran was able to build a nuclear weapon, if it decided to do so, within months and have high certainty it would work. Now they aren't able to do that. I mean, there's intelligence assessments that have become public recently that say they'll need it a year. I would probably say perhaps longer, but more importantly, the weapon may not work. That much of the nuclear weaponization infrastructure of Iran's program has been destroyed. So it's not just the enriched uranium that matters. That's critical, and that's really the centerpiece of all the negotiations right now. But the ability to make the bomb itself is important. So I think Iran has been seriously set back, and instead of us facing a program where at any moment Iran could decide to build a bomb quickly, within months, now we're with a program that, if it decided to build a bomb, would take more like a year, and there'd be roadblocks along the way that they would be facing their own uncertainty of whether they could succeed, and so the probability that it wouldn't work would be potentially substantial. So I think the war created quite a bit of damage to the program.
Yeah, there are a lot of damaged facilities, from the university where the research for a nuclear bomb was done to many of the other places that helped facilitate the creation of nuclear weapons. I do want to ask you about sort of what's happening right now. The Secretary of State says that the combat part of the war is over. The president says just this morning that negotiations are underway, or they're promising. If the goal is to keep Iran from nuclear weapons capabilities, what must be part of the agreement when it comes to how it's handled, when it comes to how Iran is moving forward or not with their nuclear program?
Well, there's a couple things. One is the enriched uranium stocks that Katie pointed out are very important, and those have to be part of a deal to preferably, from a U.S. point of view, remove the enriched uranium from Iran, and you want to create further roadblocks on Iran's ability to build the bomb, and that's a very good way to do it. Another part of it, though, is that Iran has to. They've got to commit not to build nuclear weapons, and from my point of view, they've got to admit that they do it. They always deny it, but we know they've been working on nuclear weapons for decades, and so you have to have a commitment not to do it, and then you have to have some good inspections that verify that the program has ended. And so I think and I see from some of the reporting that the Trump administration is considering that, but that's always one of the hardest things for Iran to accept, because I think no matter what they want to be able to reconstitute to build nuclear weapons, to have that option, if not actually implemented. And these negotiations have to just end that ambition on the part of Iran. The war has made that goal much harder for Iran to accomplish, but it didn't end it.
We're looking at some imagery here of some of the bombings of Esfahan and also, though, where the uranium is mined, and it looks like it's more and more of it has been mined since those initial strikes. How much, do we have any sense of how much enriched uranium there is and how difficult it would be because Iran, that's the one thing they do not want to do is give that up?
In this round, Israel took out the facility that could take that, and it's uranium ore. It's not uranium per se. Uranium is maybe 1% or less of the ore, and you have to process that at a facility. And Israel destroyed that facility in this round. And Katie pointed that out in her story. The International Atomic Energy Agency knew very precisely how much enriched uranium Iran had right before the war started in June 2025. The uncertainty now is how much of it is inaccessible. Some amount was in the Fort El Mountain, which was heavily destroyed by the U.S. bombing. Any highly enriched uranium there, or enriched uranium, is probably hard to assess. The IA has reported that over half is in these Esfahan mountain tunnel complexes, but we don't really know how much the bombing in June destroyed some of that. So I think the uncertainties are on how much is left that is accessible to Iran, and it's probably significant. So it is right that's a centerpiece of the negotiation. Now there is a question: why didn't the United States and Israel further destroy these mountain complexes? There's two that could hold enriched uranium, and I mean, the only answer I could default to right now is they wanted to make sure that in an end state negotiation that they could access them and remove them from the country. But it is a question why the United States and Israel did not attack these facilities to try to entomb whatever highly enriched uranium was inside them.